between curiosity and connection. I remember the moment it began, though at the time, I didn't realize how much it would change me. Mara took my hand with that calm certainty, her fingers warm around mine. I felt a flutter I hadn't expected, a mix of nervousness and something more, something I wasn't ready to name. My husband, Evan, stood behind me, quiet and steady, his presence like a safety net I could always trust. The three of us were about to enter a space that would test boundaries I didn't know I had, but in that first touch, I felt the beginning of understanding. Evan's hands were familiar, gentle as always. He brushed a soft circle over my hip, letting me lean into him. I sank into the comfort of the bed, the blankets warm around me, and his touch grounding. "You're thinking about her," he murmured, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I stiffened. "I'm not," I said quickly, but the truth stirred quietly in the pit of my stomach. Evan's thumb brushed over my skin with deliberate gentleness. "Even if you are, it's okay," he said softly. "Curiosity doesn't mean anything has to change. It's just exploring." I exhaled, unsure, my fingers tightening lightly in the sheets. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to my shoulder. "Let's invite her for dinner tomorrow," he suggested, calm and easy. I blinked, hesitating. Dinner? Casual. Nothing serious, he promised, but the idea filled me with a strange excitement, a fluttering tension I hadn't anticipated. The next day dragged on with nervous anticipation. I cleaned things that weren't dirty, adjusted the table more times than necessary, and changed my outfit multiple times. The smell of garlic and herbs simmered through the kitchen, grounding me in the act of creating something tangible while my mind spiraled through possibilities. By evening, I chose a soft red blouse I hadn't planned to wear. Something about it felt right, like it held the confidence I hadn't known I could claim. When Mara arrived, she leaned casually against the doorway, exuding calm confidence. Her eyes swept over me with a softness that felt like a quiet invitation. "You look lovely," she said. My voice caught in my throat. She smiled, and just like that, the tension between us seemed to hum in the air. Evan stood back, quietly observing, his gaze steady but never intrusive. We sat down to dinner, and Mara's presence was both disarming and comforting. She didn't need to say much. She just existed in a way that demanded attention without demanding compliance. Her questions were gentle, curious, not probing, and I found myself opening in ways I hadn't expected. We talked about life, about small dreams, about moments that mattered. Her hand brushed lightly over mine once, and I felt a shiver of connection that had nothing to do with anything physical. Evan's quiet presence was a constant anchor. Every so often, his fingers found mine, a silent reassurance. I realized then that intimacy wasn't just about desire. It was about trust, about feeling safe to explore parts of yourself you hadn't admitted existed. Mara's laughter, the tilt of her head when she listened closely, the way she seemed to mirror my expressions, it all drew me in. I was discovering that curiosity could feel like a quiet fire, warming and awakening me without needing to rush anything. After dinner, Mara and I found ourselves lingering in the living room. Her eyes caught mine, searching gently, and without thinking, I reached for her hand. The contact was soft, lingering, and electric in the quietest way. She didn't pull away. She leaned closer, just enough that the warmth of her presence settled against me. I felt Evan's hand on my back then, steady and grounding, and the combination was intoxicating, not in a way that demanded, but in a way that invited. We moved to the guest room, a deliberate choice to create a space where nothing felt pressured. Mara guided me to sit beside her on the bed. The touch of her hand against mine was unhurried, exploratory, gentle. Her voice was calm, honest, full of the kind of self-assurance I admired. "I don't have all the answers," she said softly. "And you don't have to either. We can just be here, together." I exhaled slowly, letting the tension in my chest release in waves I hadn't realized I was holding. Evan's hand stayed on my hip, a quiet promise that he was present, that he understood. Mara's fingers traced patterns over my hand, slowly, thoughtfully. Each movement was a small affirmation of connection, of patience, of understanding. I realized I had never felt entirely seen before, not like this. Hours passed in a blur of gentle conversation and quiet touch. Mara spoke about her own experiences with curiosity, her own journey to understanding herself. I shared hesitant thoughts I hadn't voiced before, half afraid, half relieved. Evan interjected softly when necessary, guiding without pushing, holding space for both of us. The room became a sanctuary where questions could exist without judgment, and the answers felt less urgent than the exploration itself. At one point, Mara leaned in, just enough to rest her forehead lightly against mine. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation ground me. It wasn't about passion. It was about trust, closeness, and the kind of intimacy that comes from being fully present with someone who sees you. Evan's hand on my back shifted slightly, his touch aligning with hers, and I realized the complexity of what I was feeling: curiosity, affection, love, and safety, all intertwined. I spent the night between them, wrapped in warmth that wasn't possessive but enveloping. Mara's hand in mine, Evan's arms steady around me. It was a kind of closeness I hadn't anticipated. Sleep came slowly, punctuated by quiet breaths, shared warmth, and the comfort of mutual respect and understanding. Morning light filtered through the curtains. Mara stirred first, murmuring a sleepy greeting, and I mirrored her with a soft smile, brushing my fingers over her arm. The contact was tender, reassuring, full of unspoken communication. Evan stood nearby, still half asleep, but present. When I called him over, he came without hesitation, his hands finding mine and my waist in a grounding, familiar embrace. The three of us sat there for a long moment, letting the quiet speak for us. I realized then that this wasn't just about curiosity or temptation. It was about understanding myself, about finding a safe space where I could explore feelings I hadn't known how to name. Mara's warmth, Evan's steadiness, and my own emerging confidence merged into something profoundly intimate. The days that followed were full of small gestures that carried meaning: shared meals, quiet conversations, lingering touches in the kitchen or on the couch. Every glance, every brush of a hand, every soft kiss on a shoulder reminded me that intimacy could exist without urgency, without pressure, and still carry immense significance. I found myself reflecting often, questioning what it meant to be curious, to desire connection beyond the familiar. It wasn't about replacing or diminishing what I had with Evan. It was about understanding the expansiveness of my own heart, about embracing complexity without fear. Mara's presence illuminated that possibility, and Evan's unwavering support anchored it. One evening, I caught myself simply watching them. How Mara's soft smiles lit up her face when she laughed. How Evan's hand never stopped finding mine, no matter the setting. I realized the depth of trust and care that underpinned our interactions. Connection wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the constancy of presence, the patient acknowledgement of emotions, the willingness to listen, to hold space, and to honor boundaries while gently exploring new terrain. Our closeness became a rhythm, a dance of subtle gestures and quiet communication. Mara's fingertips brushing my hand, Evan's hand resting on my hip, the soft kisses on my temple or forehead. They were symbols of a love that was expansive, accepting, and nurturing. I began to see that curiosity, when framed in trust and emotional safety, could feel profoundly liberating. One night, as we sat together in the living room, Mara traced patterns on the back of my hand, and Evan's hand rested against my side. The simultaneous presence of both of them created a wave of emotion that was entirely new to me. It wasn't urgency. It wasn't desire in the conventional sense. It was the pure recognition of being fully understood, fully accepted, and fully supported. I realized then that intimacy wasn't something to fear. It was a language of small, meaningful acts: the intertwining of fingers, the brush of a hand along an arm, the steady reassurance of a shoulder pressed against mine. It was emotional honesty paired with gentle touch. It was curiosity nurtured with care and trust. The journey wasn't always easy. Doubts and insecurities surfaced, as they always do when venturing into new emotional territory. But the presence of both Evan and Mara reminded me that I could explore without losing myself, that curiosity didn't have to threaten stability. It could enhance understanding, deepen connection, and illuminate new facets of love. By the time the week had passed, I felt changed. Not in a dramatic, visible way, but internally. I had discovered a capacity for intimacy I hadn't known I possessed, a strength in curiosity, and a profound appreciation for the bonds that can form when love, trust, and understanding converge. Mara's quiet confidence and Evan's unwavering warmth had created a space where I could be entirely myself. I felt seen, heard, and understood in ways that transcended words. The moments we shared, touching hands, brushing arms, leaning close, holding each other, had become a language of its own, one that spoke of connection, safety, and emotional honesty. In the end, it wasn't about choosing between curiosity and comfort, between Mara and Evan. It was about embracing the fullness of who I was and who I could become. It was about understanding that love and connection can take many forms, that intimacy is not solely physical, and that the courage to explore your emotions can lead to profound self-discovery. As I lay there one evening, Mara's fingers tracing soft lines on my hand and Evan's hand resting gently on my hip, I realized something important. Curiosity doesn't destroy love. It reveals it. It allows us to see ourselves in ways we might never have imagined, to feel deeply, to trust, and to connect fully. And in that quiet, intimate space, I felt complete, not because of any single touch or gesture, but because of the trust, the understanding, and the emotional closeness that had grown between us. I had learned that some questions are best answered through presence, through patience, and through connection, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries happen not in grand moments, but in the soft, lingering intimacy of being truly seen.